Hello and welcome back to my mom's basement, ladies and gentlemen. I am here with the one, the only, best in the world, CM Punk. Punk, this is the first time that you and I have spoken publicly since you even returned to wrestling. So I want to start off by saying congratulations. And just as a fan, it's awesome to see you being happy out there, having fun.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's fun again. So I'm gonna keep having fun. I really enjoy it, especially because apparently me having fun really upsets people. So I kind of get the best of both worlds, whereas like I'm having fun doing something, and god damn it if people just aren't upset about it. So I'm like, oh good, that's fun.
I mean, they'll find something to like, be upset about. Everyone will, you know. We're here ahead
Absolutely.
of a huge match you got against Matt Sydal on Friday. I looked into this. You guys have had to know each other for a while, right? Because you guys worked a tag match on a TNA show in 2003. You had a few matches in IWA Mid South in 2004. You had a few matches in WWE, the last of which was in 2012. You and Matt know each other?
Of course. We've known each other so long that I don't even recall having a tag match with him in TNA in 2003.
Yeah, it was like a
That's how
TNA
long I've known.
explosion tag. Yeah.
Yeah, thankfully I've blocked most of my TNA experience out of my mind, or I'm just of that age where that's the fringe years where I just start to forget everything. I've known Matt a super long time. He's super talented, and I'm excited to wrestle the 2021 version of him.
I've really enjoyed the 2021 version of CM Punk, the match with Darby, the match with Hobbs, the match with Garcia. These are tremendous matches. Have you changed your approach to putting matches together since you returned? I mean, the first match with Darby, the Bret Hart references in it and everything, I loved all of that.
I'm not sure if I've changed anything. I'm still trying to remember how to do it. I'm very much one of those dudes that wants simplicity, and I would rather just go out there and listen to the crowd, have a couple of beats and just let the crowd take us to wherever we're going to go. But after not wrestling for 7 years, and you're in the ring with people that you've never wrestled before, I realize my approach has to be of a certain way. So when I say that I'm still getting my legs underneath me, it's in that regard. It's just remembering how to do all this stuff. You know what I mean? I think it was easier when you're wrestling Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, but that's way harder on your body. But mentally, it's like a muscle you don't use, so you lose it. And I'm just slowly getting that back.
Where do you fall on the philosophy of calling things in the ring or calling everything in the back? Like I know some wrestlers are very insistent on, hey, let's leave some things to the crowd. You just said you like the crowd taking you where they take you. So where do you fall
Mhm.
on that?
Um, I'm very much a guy that believes the less you have called, the more organic and better the match will be. I said this to somebody backstage the other day. I said, "Hey, you can't fuck up if you have nothing planned. You just can't. You just go out there and you wrestle. It's different when you've never wrestled somebody. Gone are the days of two separate locker rooms and the referee telling you what the finish is, and you get in the ring and you just do that. Not a lot of people would be able to do that nowadays. Do I think that's unfortunate? Yes. Am I going to be the old timer who complains about that? Maybe some days, but I also recognize that it's gone. It's gone. So this is what we have. So I'm just gonna work on making what we have better, right? And maybe go back a little bit. And when I think people can handle that sort of a workload thing, you know, like I'll put it to you like this: I guarantee you, if me and Brian Danielson were booked on a show, we could go out there with nothing called and wrestle. And I'm sure it'd be fantastic, and I would have fun, and he would have fun. Just certain people just don't have that experience.
Yeah, it seems like you said, is kind of the past era of the business, and that kind of got left behind. So it is unfortunate because that is a really cool aspect of wrestling to me. Even in heels, when they're calling things in the ring and they're doing the close-ups and the whispers, and like I like all that stuff as a wrestling fan. I like knowing
Mhm.
that this stuff was improvised. So I hope that it's not gone forever. I'll say that.
Well, there's a few people that are trying to bring it back, and it's really just all about teaching and and still learning. I'm still learning, so I'm sure there's people I can get in there with that can learn. You'll always be put in situations where you gotta be ready for it. So the more experienced with just calling stuff on the fly you are, I think the better off you will be.
We talked about Bret Hart a little bit because you had the references to that Bret Hart 1, 2, 3 Kid match. And I saw an interview with you recently where you were talking about his work maybe holding up better in 2021 than Shawn Michaels. And I thought it was very interesting because I've seen this become a discussion on Twitter recently, whose work holds up better. And a lot of people lean Bret's because it doesn't rely so much on the athleticism and stuff like that. Do you think about that as a wrestler today? How are my matches going to hold up in the future? Or are you just trying to put on the best match you can that night?
No, I don't think too much. I don't think that far ahead. I think I stand on a body of work that, you know, um, will stand the test of time. And, I think most of my stuff, when I finally got it, holds up. There's definitely some of my indie stuff that I would probably watch and just cringe and laugh at. But uh, I'm just approaching every match like kind of trying to be in the present and not so much worry about past stuff or what people are going to think about it 10 years in the future. I'm very dialed into the present.
Well, there's one match that I think has held up so well, and it's actually 17 years ago this week. It's in about 3 days, I think, is the anniversary. That's Punk versus Joe 2. It's the 60-minute time limit
Ah,
draw. I wanted to
does
ask,
it hold up?
I think it does. I really do. What do you
60
remember
minutes
about
is a
that night?
long time. Um, God, when you do a 60-minute, when you do a 60-minute match, I think you got to try to break it down into 4 15-minute matches. Otherwise, your head will just explode. Um, but again, I'm not going to say that me and Joe just went out there and had nothing called. I'm sure there was definitely stuff that we had, talked about, but it's all the in between stuff that I think is the most important in a match like that. I'm shocked to hear that holds up. I mean, 60 minutes is a long time to watch a wrestling match.
Maybe I'm a sucker for Iron Man matches because I also like the main event of WrestleMania 12, and I feel like revisionist history, people have been like, people were walking out, it stunk, rest holds, and I'm like, I love that match. So I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a menu, right? Like everybody's got
Yeah.
something on the menu that they're not going to order and they have their favorite and they want to try something different, but I think I'll just go ahead and get the meatballs. I loved wrestling Joe. I think he gave me a pretty good black eye that night. And then I think the next day I had to go get my new driver's license or something like that. So I had a nice shiner in my driver's license picture. I was proud of that for years.
Damn, that seems like it could be a cool T-shirt right now, like a CM Punk driver's license where he's got a black eye.
Pretty sure I lost that driver's license. It's gone forever.
Oh, damn. I thought there was a great segment in Philly when the show went off the air with all the ECW originals and you ran out for it. What do you look back on that WWE ECW era of your career like with any fond memories, or was that just like, I'm really struggling here?
Yeah, I got a ton of fond memories, like, for every shit bag I think that I had to deal with, there was somebody cool like a Chavo Guerrero, you know what I mean? And like I had known Chavo for years, obviously, through Eddie. So he was like one of those guys that, like he had been there for years already. And the getting to work with him was always a night off, we got to do fun, cool stuff, but it was relaxed, no pressure, just the pressure to deliver, like match quality, like go out there and tell a story and have a kick-ass match. So yeah, I got a lot of fun memories. Like I think my first road family was shout out here, Doug Basham and Kevin Furtig. So those are two guys who were like in the system for a while. They had been up to TV, maybe got called back down, and they were looking at just kind of keeping their noses clean and holding on to their jobs. So like we all just jumped in the car, we'd all crash in a hotel room, and those guys kind of helped me understand what life on the road was like. Tons of fond memories of early ECW stuff. I'm glad it's so good to focus on like the positive stuff for once. Everybody always wants to know like the negative stories and stuff like that. So salute.
And yeah, that ain't the show. My Mom's Basement, we're talking about the positives and everything. One of those being, you mentioned your relationship with Eddie Guerrero briefly there, and that's how you knew Chavo. Eddie wrote in his book that you and Ace Steel kind of took him in that time where he was, maybe in a bad place and he was on the indies. And he said that he remembers nights where you guys would just stay up all night talking about wrestling. Do you remember like those conversations and what you wanted to pick Eddie Guerrero's brain on and the wisdom that he passed down to you?
Yeah. When you're talking to Eddie Guerrero, when he's sitting in your apartment, you know what I mean? He's got like a super early flight and he doesn't got a rental car. And, you offer, me and Ace lived together in Chicago at the time. And I just offered, I was like, just, come over, whatever. And he was like, oh, I'll take a cab. And I was like, don't worry about it, taking a cab. Like, I'll take you to the airport. No, get some sleep. And it was one of those things where it's like, you can either try to put your head on the pillow and get a nap, maybe get like 2 hours, or you just wind up staying up. And I know a lot of wrestlers wind up staying up. I currently do it. I fly home so early from most cities when I'm doing AEW stuff that like I get done with the show and I'm so buzzing that I can't possibly sleep. And then you look at you look at your watch and you're like, flight's leaving in like 5 hours anyway. I might as well just stay up. All right. I just had the fortunate experience of having Eddie Guerrero in my apartment. I remember him being completely freaked out at my bookcase because it's just all books about serial killers. And I just remember him like looking over and he was like, kind of a weird guy, but I don't remember specifically like picking his brain. It was literally just more relaxed, like friend kind of conversations, like he was extremely grateful for, the ride to the airport. And I mean, it wasn't like in the middle of like a really bad snowstorm too. So like, I'm not even sure if you would have been able to get a cab to go all the way out to O'Hare. It's just a super cool experience. And I didn't do it because he was Eddie Guerrero. It could have been any one of the boys. It was just like, you don't have a ride. You're flying out of O'Hare. Well, we live X amount of time from there. We'll just take you. But super cool. And he didn't have to write about us in his book, but I think he did just because he was a good dude. And, it's probably something that, really touched him, because why would these strangers help me? And that's the good part about the business, that's one of the reasons I'm back, is to try to continue to pay stuff like that forward. Like Eddie Guerrero was always super good to me, so I'm just trying to be super good to the kids these days.
Yeah, I recently went to the WWE warehouse and seeing Eddie's boots, those gold boots with the flames on them, that was like it put chills in my arms just knowing like, holy shit, those are Eddie Guerrero. He wore those at WrestleMania. Like, are you kidding me? So having him in your living room talking about your bookcase, like I can't even imagine. My brain would explode. I
Yeah,
saw a
it's wild.
tweet from you the other day. This is kind of off topic, but I just thought it was a funny tweet. It made me laugh where someone asked, what was your favorite moment backstage that you've had so far? And you said it was Larry interrupting a pre-tape.
Yeah.
Can you tell that story?
I don't think I can, because I honestly don't know
Oh, is
what's
it a
aired,
future
what and
pre-tape?
what had.
Oh
Yeah,
man.
I really don't know. I was so embarrassed. Like, but then there's also talk of, this is really peeling back the curtain. So I kind of hate it, but there's talk of maybe using it because it could kind of work. All I know is like I had like a myself and April had like a crises. Larry's not the most cordial, and he has a few people that can watch him. And my little sister was out of town, so she couldn't. And April was last minute booked to go fly do the WoW announcement with Jeannie Buss. So I was kind of left holding the bag, and I was like, well, I guess I'll just deal with this, And then I knew Tony had stayed in Champaign that week, so I buzzed him and I was like, hey man, I got Larry and I have to, nobody can watch him. If I can get to Champaign, can I jump on the jet with you to go to Philly? And he was like, yeah, because that eliminates one leg of travel with Larry, who's an awful, awful person to travel with. Like, he's gotten me thrown off a flight before. So it's a little much, right? So I was just like, as long as I can get there and get the TV, I'm good. And then I'll figure out a way to get home. I was probably going to rent a car and drive just because it's easier to deal with Larry that way. And then, this is the kind of boss Tony is. Tony was just like, why don't you just take the jet back too? Like, completely hooked it up. I didn't ask. But that's the kind of dude he is. He explained it. He's just like, we're a sports team. I'm taking care of my quarterback, and I super appreciate that from him. But yeah, I was in the middle of the day, so I was trying to take Larry outside, and me and Larry wound up sprinting through somebody's pre-tape. And I felt bad about it. I felt really embarrassed, but Larry had to go to the bathroom,
That's hysterical. I love the love that you have for Larry. It's my favorite thing, maybe about CM Punk in general, is the love that you have for Larry. So another thing you mentioned there, AJ Mendez signs with WOW Women of Wrestling to become an executive producer and color commentator. She's going to be on screen. This, I'm sure, is something that you guys have talked about forever. And there's been a lot of chatter online about, hey, the timing of this is right after CM Punk returns to wrestling. Was there a rekindling of that wrestling love or fire with you guys together?
I don't want to put words in her mouth, but I think that's just a happy coincidence. I think it was more, so I'll go ahead and, I had somebody reach out to me saying, hey, Jeannie Buss wants to talk to April. And I was like, what? And, April doesn't know anything about sports, like nothing, so I took the idea to her, and I was just like, you have to at least take this meeting. Jeannie Buss is the most powerful woman in sports. I think in my mind, I was just doing, cartwheels thinking of my wife talking to Jeannie Buss. And I thought that was super cool. And, they had a great conversation, and Jeannie was just, kind of kickstarting WOW. And it really just kind of fit into the stuff that April's doing, writing, producing. So it really was just an idea presented to her that I think opened her up to, oh shit, yeah, this is actually perfect. Like, I can help like the next generation of female wrestlers with the creative side of stuff. And, I don't have to get concussed. Like, it's excellent. So it really fit what she's doing in her wheelhouse, and I'm super stoked she's doing it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm excited to see her back in the wrestling world. Like, as fans, it's awesome as well. Something that you mentioned in the All Out media scrum that I wanted to touch on was that you felt that Terry Funk doesn't get the credit that he deserves as a wrestler. And as someone that is obviously very young, didn't get to experience much of Terry Funk as not the hardcore legend Terry Funk, I want to kind of give him his flowers, let you give him his flowers. What drew you to Terry Funk in the first place? What do you love about Terry Funk as a wrestler?
Well, I think my first experience with Terry Funk was, knowing that he was like a WCW NWA guy, but he was in Roadhouse and he was in Over the Top. And he really has kind of had these multiple career resurgences. The dude retired, I think, for the first time. I think maybe I was 2 years old. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
he had already had this amazing career before, he wanted some health insurance. So he got his SAG card and he was doing movies and stuff like that. And then every once in a while, somebody would come to him with an idea and a bag of money, and he would be like, yeah, I'll do that. Sounds kind of familiar, right? So I just think a lot of people, and I'm not sure if there's a ton of footage of Terry Funk as, world heavyweight champion. Like, Dory was the champ for so long. Terry was the champ, like early 70s NWA. And, they were the first and maybe still only brothers who held the world championship, and just all those guys, like the Harley Races and all those guys. You think NWA and you think of Ric Flair, and to me, who's kind of a would-be wannabe wrestling historian, I think of all those guys that came before that, like Dory Funk and Terry Funk, all those dudes. And I just think, to be the NWA champion, like, you had to be so many things, and one of them was like a legit badass. You had to be on the road like 24/7. That's why a lot of the guys after being champ for so many years, just said, I don't want to do this no more. It's too grueling. I think Flair was the only guy who wanted to do that constantly 24/7. Everybody else, it just schedule is just too rough, too rough on families and stuff like that. But Terry was a dude who I think was such an excellent wrestler. And then just based on his age and injuries, and he changed his style, and then you get like the hardcore legend Terry Funk. But there's a reason why a lot of those dudes idolize Terry, and it's barbed wire matches and all that stuff. Like a guy like Mick Foley loved Terry Funk, and so he's like kind of the bridge in between like all these different generations of wrestlers, myself included. I remember wrestling him in the Murphy Rec Center in Philadelphia, and I was just like terrified, like he was made of porcelain, right? And that was my approach. It was like, yes sir, no sir, and I hit him with a chair in the match, and I didn't want to, but he told me to do it. And he literally just stopped and turned around, and he was like, is that all you got, you pussy? And then punched me like right in the face. And I was just, you're excited about that. You're like, it's fucking Terry Funk just punched me in the face, like he has punched Patrick Swayze in the face, and now he's punching me in the face. I love Terry Funk, hopefully he's doing well. I know there was like a scare a couple months back, but apparently it was all a false alarm. He's still Terry Funk.
Best wishes to Terry. Always going to kick out at 2. That's the man that he is. I love him. What is your philosophy on titles in AEW? Because I saw someone go back and forth with you recently, and you were like, maybe a TBS title, I'd be down with them adding that, and they have added it. But I think someone was talking about trios titles and that, and you were like, nothing more. Are you someone that likes the simplicity of titles in wrestling?
Yeah, 100%. I think if everybody has a title and if everybody's a champion, then nobody's a champion. I think you got to be really careful with that. And I think TBS titles even pushing it. There's already a women's title. Do we have the depth in the women's division? Do we have the depth in the men's division to have, a secondary title? I think been doing it pretty good so far. I think Miro brought a lot of credibility to that belt and like stabilized it. And obviously Kenny Omega's the AEW champion. It's kind of a touchy subject. I know in 2021, everybody wants to, really extol the virtues of women's wrestling. And this isn't a knock. I married a women's wrestler. I just wonder if we have the personnel to support a secondary or a title that's on even footing with, the women's title. I don't know. In trios, it's the same thing. It's just like, yeah, there's a lot of stables that have 3 people, and yeah, you could have me tag with Sting and Darby, but again, if everybody's a champion, nobody's a champion. There needs to be, in my opinion, less titles. But we'll see how it goes. I'm sure all the women will prove me wrong, and I'm okay with that.
I definitely lean on your side as far as like I'm not super down for the trios titles either. I definitely agree that tag seems fine. That doesn't seem like
I think
trios.
I think maybe instead of another women's title, maybe women's tag belts. But then again, I don't know. Women's tag belts before trio belts. I'll say that.
Heels just wrapped up season 1. I loved Heels season 1. Shout out Michael Waldron, friend of the basement. It's no secret Ricky Rabies was sort of based on Tracy Smothers. Is there another real life wrestler that you think is prime for like a fictionalized version on Heels?
I really think you get a lot of looks of other real life wrestlers through the lens of Heels. I mean, Wild Bill, you name it. Hey, Larry's a big fan of Wild Bill. Obviously, I think there's a lot of parallels, Ric Flair and Wild Bill.
Yeah.
But there's so many wrestlers that have just, I think, totally car crashed their own fucking lives that it's, a lot of the times it'll just wind up being a coincidence. But yeah, I think if we do a season two, I definitely think I'll probably be brought on board and have a little bit more input. So you'll probably see a lot more Easter eggs and stuff that's kind of drawn out from real life and history and put into the show just to add a little bit more credibility to it.
Amazing. I love that. I was such a big fan of Heels. If you are watching this interview and you haven't watched Heels, go on Hulu, get like the free subscription of Stars or whatever, and
Yeah,
watch Heels. It's 8 episodes.
it's a
Get through the
really
first season. It's
it's a
awesome. You'll get
really
through the
good
first season
show.
like that. You'll binge it. Speaking of things you binged, it's October. I want to talk some horror movies before we get out of here because you said
Good.
Midnight Mass was one of your favorite shows since Breaking Bad. I'm on like episode 5 right now, so I don't want to get the ending spoiled for me or anything, but I am loving it.
I'm not gonna spoil anything for anybody. I'm a huge Flanagan fan. You know, I
Yeah.
think I went to go see Doctor Sleep in the theater, I think 3 times. And a lot of that was just because it was so visually stunning to me, like the colors, the way it was shot, but also how Mike Flanagan juggled making a sequel to not only The Shining, the movie, but to the book. Like it still boggles my mind how he did this so masterfully, where if you read the book and hated the movie, you still love Dr. Sleep. If you never read the book and watched The Shining, the movie, and are a Kubrick fan, it was still an ode to that and followed that up. I don't understand. He must have sold his soul to the devil, because then he comes out with, you know, the Bly Manor, I
Bly
thought was a
Manor is so
masterpiece.
good. Yeah.
Obviously, Haunting of Hill House is a masterpiece. And it's really just, I hate the word elevated horror, you know, because really it's just, I'm 42 and I love horror of all kinds. Just calling it elevated just means I'm 42 and I like maybe some more sophisticated stuff. Whereas 12-year-old Phil would just be like, slasher movies, let's go.
Yeah.
Uh, I think the subject matter of Black Mass, I think a lot of people might be touchy about it. But if you grew up in a Catholic household like I did, it was I was just freaking out. I was just freaking out. Like I've known that Beth Keane character like my entire life, right? Like
Yeah.
I know these people, and just they nailed every single aspect of the Catholic Church. I'm obviously I'm an atheist, and so like, you know, church bad, you know, but just the way he, oh God, it's just it is my favorite show. It might be my favorite show of all time. Like that's
Wow.
seriously how much I loved it. Just the acting and the way, you know, you're watching the show and you're like, okay, another monologue, but it makes sense because it's religion, and
Long monologues too. Like the
that's what
acting is
church is.
impressive. Yeah.
Every Sunday, somebody's standing at a pulpit or an altar and they're just monologuing the entire time. And the way he does it reminds me a lot of really, really good pro wrestling, right? You go out
Hmm.
and you tell the people the truth until you stop telling them the truth, but you've always told the truth so much that they can't figure out when you started working and what's true and what's not, so they still believe you and it's still the truth. And just that show is just hypnotizing to me. Like i I loved it, and he uses the same actors over and over and
Yep.
over again, and they are so talented that you can't tell. You got to squint and go, okay, I remember her from Bly Manor now. But just the way they are all just firing on all cylinders, like super, super impressed with everybody that had anything to do with that show. Loved it so much.
Yeah, the guy who has his Muslim son going to the Catholic Church and he's like so, feeling on eggshells about it. He's one of the best actors in the whole franchise. In the Bly Manor, Hill House, whatever. He was so good in Bly Manor, so good in this. I would recommend that to everyone as well. When you're done watching Heels, go watch
But yeah,
Midnight Mass. And if I were to ask you, we're in October, your 3 essential horror movies, like everyone should watch these every October. Which 3 would you give me? I just watched Scream for the first time ever, and I was pretty blown away by that. I thought it was great.
Scream's a great movie. Scream's like a time capsule. It couldn't have been made
Oh, I
any
know.
earlier. It couldn't have been made any later. Like it's a
Are the
little
sequels
tongue in
worth
cheek, but just
watching?
enough. Yeah, I think Scream 3 might be a little underrated by people, you
All
know.
right.
Nothing captures obviously the original,
Yeah.
and so like the vote number one horror movie of all time is Halloween. Obviously, John Carpenter, Deborah Hill, geniuses. they gave us that, and it gave birth to every single slasher movie after that, including Scream. Um, I got, just because it's on Sci-Fi Network right now, I got Friday the 13th. I think part 6 is on right now. It's either 6 or 7. I think it's 7. Yeah, Supernatural. So that's 7. Yeah. Um, but top 3, I mean, ooh, I'd have to really sit and think about it. Like,
Is Texas Chainsaw up there for you?
I think so.
The
Yeah,
original?
for sure. But see, I always like to try to give a little bit of variety instead of just being like,
Mm,
here's 3 slasher
yeah.
films. And Texas Chainsaw is brilliant for all the reasons that are opposite of why Halloween is brilliant. You know, Halloween is theater of the mind. Like, there's no blood; it's just psychological. And then Texas Chainsaw Massacre just comes and hits you over the head with a giant mallet, and you're just like, "What the fuck?" Um, I always would tell people Rosemary's Baby, but Polanski's a piece of shit. And like, I'm that empathetic dude who I can't watch Rosemary's Baby anymore, you know,
I'm with
because
you.
I'm
Yeah.
like, that dude sleeps with little girls and it's fucking weird. And I
Yeah.
hate that.
Fuck them.
Um, I think Psycho is a good one too, but it can be a little bit long and drawn out before you get to the meaty stuff. Uh, I'm a big Universal horror monster too, but sometimes it's a little tedious. Like, I get it, like black and white films, and but it's good to know your roots and see where like everything else has come from. I'm just John Carpenter again. I think The Thing. You know, people
Yeah.
can call
I've
it
seen you talk
sci-fi.
about the thing.
It's the same thing though. It's horror. It's claustrophobic. You know, a bunch of guys in Antarctica, no contact to the outside world, dealing with an alien, and they don't know who's infected. It just it's it's fucking brilliant. An Alien, I think, is another good one. You know, and you talk about badass female types. I think Ripley, Sigourney Weaver in that film is like one of the first. You know, I don't even know if you call her a final girl. I just think she like transcends all of that. You
Yeah.
know, like final girl is somebody who's being chased, you know, by the killer and kind of survives. Like, I think Ripley was just like, you know,
She's
way more
chasing the
badass
killer.
than that. Yeah, a little bit, a little bit.
All right, Punk. Thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it. As always, I'm excited for the match against Seidel on Friday, and I'm excited to see your AEW career continue.
Yeah, me too. Knock on wood. It continues.